Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Trade of the Week. We've got a really exciting guest joining us on the show today. Obviously, I'm joined by my co-host Elliot. We'll be discussing some of the trades in the FX markets and also what's been going on in the equities market, adding a new function into this episode. So I'll hand over to Elliot and we'll jump straight into some of the FX trades.
Trade of the Week, here we go. Right, so we've got some good trades on this week. We're going to start on our favourite pair, which is cable. Pound against the US dollar. So we've got a couple of trades here on this chart. The main one we're going to focus on is the buy that we can see here. So obviously cable again has been quite a big mover this week. We've seen, obviously more strength come in after the sort of Brexit news and the vaccine news as well. Since then it's cooled off a bit. However, this trader here has took this trade in sort of the end of October. He got in quite a good level and he's held it all the way sort of through to this week and sort of closed out here after it sort of consolidated again at this high. But yeah, sort of almost a 4% trade.
Amazing. What a great trade. What a great position to enter. Looks like it took a bounce there off of a S2 initially on the left-hand side after we saw that consolidation period. And as prices moved on, rallied, it looks like a great exit as well. Again, I'm not favourite at the moment of buys on the pound. I'm still looking at shorting into pound strength. But I mean, what a great outcome on this position, 4%.
Yeah, you can do well, sort of buying low and selling high on cable at the moment, aren't you? Because it's it's just very volatile, which you can get some decent pips from these moves.
Yeah.
So again, cable. I think that's made trade of the week sort of every week so far.
Yeah, cable has. Yeah, I think it's just because it's been so volatile. Traders have been able to pick out some great entries and exits on it. Yeah, well done. So on to the next one. What have we got here? We've got US dollar against the Swiss franc. What's going on here then, Elliot?
So we've got two trades again on this chart. The first one here is a sell. So you can see we've had a sort of support level here that's been broken. EMAs have crossed over. He's taken it short all the way down to the lows. And again, he's waited for this sort of consolidation to come in, got a good exit, and then we've seen the strong rally come in. This is sort of the vaccine news announcement. So he timed it very well to close that trade. He's then obviously seen it rally and looked to jump on with a buy, which for me I wouldn't advise doing, especially when you've seen most of the moves almost done here. However, they've pipped another 90 quid out of it. But yeah, the main focus on this one is this trade here. It's a nice break out of this support level here and a great exit in my opinion.
Yeah.
Obviously he's got lucky to timing it just before that news sort of came
in line with the trend there, seeing the consolidation, come to your trading charts in the morning and decided, right, time to close out. Nice one. As for chasing the trade there, it's a bit of chasing the trade, isn't it, when the market's rallied up. But hey, nonetheless, done well. The only issue with doing well on that is now that they think that that's a good method going forward and it could rack up to longer losses with the probability of success on it. So just
definitely
to be cautious
don't make
on
a habit.
So, don't make a habit of chasing the trade, so to speak. But yeah, obviously great news on the vaccine stuff. Let's move on.
Yeah, so we've got another curveball for you guys this week. This trade is on CAD yen. Again, not something I've ever traded before, I don't think. However, after the Kiwi yen last week, we thought we'd get another one in. This one's actually a short against the trend. But again, I mainly picked it out just because of the strong exit here we've seen.
So this trader here has seen the spike from the vaccine news and taken a short position, believing that there was a bit of an overreaction in the market there, and actually called a reasonable entry to get in, and the market has slowly drifted back down, looking more like a 50-60% sell-off level there, getting out just before the S1 on the 13th there. So amazing trade there on CAD yen, picking up just over 1% on that position. Stop loss there was literally just above the 81.6 level, which is above the vaccine spike high, and then played the trade all the way down, giving a nice 1% return there on that position. Fantastic trade there. That's the three trades we got on Trade of the Week. And so obviously you can see the vaccine news there over the last couple of charts, which usually we don't cover in the FX Trade of the Week, but we're going to cover it today because it's so important. And we've seen the markets transition, especially in the equities market, on the tech side. So what's your opinion on that and how is it panning out for us, Elliot?
Yeah, so obviously the initial spike we saw on the vaccine news. We saw Dow hit 30,000 pre-market.
Boom, 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 boom.
S&P also hit record highs, and we've seen a big recovery in the FTSE 100. Interestingly, Nasdaq was down on the day. We've seen a move out of the tech industry into the valuation companies, low valuation because they've been hit by, the mad COVID pandemic that we've been through. So it's interesting play. That was sort of early in the week. The last day or so, we've seen a bit of strength come back into the tech market, especially the bigger players such as Amazon, Apple, which doesn't really surprise me as much because Amazon, they're still going to continue to do well. We've got Black Friday. Lockdowns aren't going to end anytime soon, especially here in Europe. In the UK, we're still seeing higher cases. The UK has just gone above 50,000 deaths, first country in Europe to do that. So, it's not, although the vaccine is great for markets, and great outlook over the next, say, 6 months. However, I think looking right now, it's still going to take a bit of time for us to come out of these lockdowns.
Yeah, so really, really interesting play that we're seeing in the equities market. What we're going to do is we're going to jump to an interesting guest who's got a lot of experience in investment banking. We're going to go to Brent Sun, who's executive chairman of Logic, who is an up-and-coming competitor to the likes of Wix, Shopify, different platforms like that in the e-commerce space. And we're going to go see Brent. So over to you, Brent. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Thanks for having me, Samuel. My name is Brent Sun. I am the president and executive chairman of Logic Inc., and we're listed on the OTCQX market in the U.S.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We've been discussing on our episode this week about the transition of money flow coming from out of tech to, specifically, we've seen a little bit more risk-on sort of assets moving into, say, financials and even airlines with the vaccine news. What's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, what we've been seeing is there was a very short-lived rotation out of tech and into value. And then over the past few days, we've seen most of the big tech names start to tick up again. So we believe it was relatively short-lived in terms of the reset, but certainly value stocks do represent an area of focus for retail and institutional investors.
Yeah, amazing. Obviously, we know that Logic is focused in the e-commerce sector. Can you give us a little bit more information about what Logic does, what its focus points is, and kind of like where it's targeting at the moment?
Certainly, happy to. So we are in the e-commerce enablement space, very broadly speaking. What does that mean? Getting offline businesses, generally smaller ones, into an online type of shop. The bigger companies that do this are relatively household names for tech investors, companies such as Shopify, BigCommerce, Wix, GoDaddy, all publicly traded, all multi-billion-dollar market caps. What differentiates us is that those focus on websites that are optimized for mobile. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, as you guys know, being in the UK and I'm here in the US, roughly 80% of the people who access the internet have desktop and laptop computers. So 80% is about what you'd find in developed markets. But if you look at emerging markets, which we have a focus in, specifically Southeast Asia, it's actually the inverse. So about 80% of the people there do not have desktop and laptop computers. So when you go out to a small business and you say, we'd like to get you online with a website, they have no idea what a website is. Everything starts with the phone and ends with the phone, because over the past 5 years, they've gone from nothing to smartphones to access and do business on the internet. So we have a mobile focus only. You build your site through the phone, your customers access it through the phone, everything is through the phone. The big companies that I mentioned, it's all website driven that are optimized for mobile and predominantly focused on developed markets. We have a focus on emerging markets. So we have a number of products that are in the app space purely to enable small businesses to get their business online, and then all the tools for them to sell more, sell better, as we like to say.
Amazing.
That's really interesting. Thanks, Brent. Yeah, just want to know a bit more about your sort of growth strategy going forward for Logic. I've seen you've done quite a few acquisitions. Is that going to be sort of the theme going forward? Is that how you're going to sort of look to grow aggressively, or
Very much so, yes.
what sort of companies are you looking to target?
We generally target companies on the acquisition side that are what are deemed to be tuck-in acquisitions, accretive to earnings on one hand, but certainly representing very specific types of technology that we could then layer into our general product offering and would then continue to differentiate us from some of the larger peers.
And so obviously you're saying you're looking at more emerging markets. What sort of emerging markets specifically are you looking at?
Emerging markets, we're currently in Indonesia, which is 260 million people, fourth most populous country in the world, 99% smartphone penetration. Some of the neighboring countries in Southeast Asia, such as Thailand, we're in, Vietnam. We're also looking at Laos, which is a bit smaller, but interesting nonetheless. We're also in discussions with several markets in Africa, one being Nigeria, and then very selectively into the Middle East as well, into some of the more populous countries.
Cool. And do you have any sort of competitors out there, or is it a free-for-all at the moment? Are you sort of trying to get first to market?
It's a bit different. We certainly do not run into Shopify, BigCommerce, Wix, or GoDaddy in any of the markets we're in. There are generally smaller local players. We're seeing very few of those that are venture capital funded, in literally none that are publicly traded. I would say that probably the best bellwether or singular stock that investors could look at to get an idea of the trajectory in Southeast Asia is a company by the name of SEA. Their ticker symbol is SE, Sierra Echo. They are currently branded by Barron's as the best performing global tech stock in the world. They went public in the US 2 years ago at around $8 a share. They're currently at $180 per share, trading with a $90 billion market cap. And if you look at their chart, it's just been stellar. They are only in Southeast Asia. They're trading at about 30 times revenues. Their growth has been significant. We run across them, but they're more focused around e-commerce itself rather than e-commerce enablement. And incidentally, we partnered with them in July. It's on our news flow, and that, among several other recent deals that we've signed on a strategic basis, have further validated our efforts into the region.
So it's interesting you mentioned July, Brent, because obviously that's sort of where we've seen a growth in Logic share price. Is that due to that partnership, or is it a combination of factors such as sort of the pandemic that's had a positive effect on e-commerce?
It's more of the former. I mean, for better or worse, we've been a relative unknown. We have attracted a lot of interest after announcing the relationship with C. Right on the heels of that, we announced a partnership with a very large India-based tech company by the name of Tech Mahindra. They're traded on the Bombay Stock Exchange. They've got about a $6.2 billion market cap. That's US dollars. And then about a week and a half ago, we announced a partnership with the Social Security Administration in Indonesia that gives us access to their 48 million members. So we'll be launching that. Actually, we're launching it as we speak. That has attracted a bit of investor interest, but more on the institutional side and more on the VC side in terms of institutions. We expect that should start to translate over to more publicly trading focused institutions and certainly retail investors as we move forward and describe that. But although our share price has moved up a bit in the past few months, we are still trading at around two times revenues. You look at our peers, the ones I mentioned, anywhere from 25 times revenues to Shopify 56 times revenues. So we're still way off the averages in terms of valuation.
Cool. And sorry to jump around a bit. So obviously you mentioned you're looking to go into new markets and your focus is on sort of smaller businesses. How do you look to onboard these businesses? And obviously if you're going to, different countries, obviously different cultures and different sort of relationships, how do you go about building these new relationships to onboard these?
That's a great question. So our historical approach when we started, and incidentally, we've been in business for right at 6 years. We structured predominantly what are called white label partnerships. So depending upon the country or region, we would then partner with existing businesses that are either in the logistics, e-commerce fulfillment space or consumer software space that are generally local businesses that had presence there, salespeople there. So we would not have to staff up in terms of direct sales, thereby creating a scenario where they had local knowledge, language capabilities, et cetera, on the marketing and sales side. But incidentally, our platform is offered in 15 different languages. So they would be selling a product that would be language-based, focused around the markets that they're in. So it was not a stretch for them. Recently, we've switched over to a more direct digital approach, which we'll be talking about on our quarterly earnings call next Monday. We expect to see higher margins from that. In terms of strategic direction, currently, in addition to that, the nature of the partnerships we're striking is more direct, where our partners are not necessarily product focused, but they're more member or user focused. And then we would be layering in our product to their existing database rather than going after a pure sales approach. So as with the recent partnership in Indonesia with their Social Security Administration, it's easy for them to market to 48 million members by way of text messaging, emails, proper mailing, saying this is the platform that we're onboarding, as opposed to trying to sell people. It's more opening it up and saying, here it is. So there's a bit of a different strategic approach, but nonetheless, everything is localized and familiar to their members.
Cool, great, thanks.
Yeah, and the final question for us is, and obviously a lot of the guys listening from traders around the world, both day traders and long-term holders, we've obviously seen with Logix listed on the OTC at the moment. Is there hopes for it to move to a bigger exchange anytime on the horizon?
Hopes. That's always been our internal desire. But in terms of actuality, we recently announced that we are listing onto the NEO exchange in Canada. To put that in perspective, that is a tier 1 global exchange alongside the Toronto Stock Exchange. Why did we choose them? Canada is the home of Shopify, and more recently, a number of very, very good performing, great performing tech names. As part of that, now that is an IPO, so it will be led by an investment bank. It will have all the hallmarks of an IPO, and hopefully with the same market impact. One of the other things we liked about the NEO exchange is they are part of a program with the NYSE called the Passport Program. What does that mean? Well, typically a company listed on the OTC would either attempt to uplist onto NASDAQ or NYSE on their own. That is a very challenging process. This year, we've seen 28 companies out of 360 successfully uplist, only because the bandwidth constraints at NASDAQ have hindered that. But that's common every year. The Passport Program, the NEO exchange in Q1 of next year, we are going to have them apply directly to the NYSE and cross-list us. So although it will be an uplist from the OTCQX to the NYSE, it's by no means a DIY approach. It's more of an exchange-to-exchange initiative. Generally, when that happens, you see about a 95% success ratio. You see a tremendous amount of institutional interest because that follows a different path. And by way of already being on a senior exchange, going to another senior exchange, that should get us a lot more institutional focus. But we believe the IPO, which we're intending to complete in December, should bring a very large amount of retail and institutional interest. And certainly being the home of Shopify in Canada, we expect to see a very nice following in interest from Canadian investors, and certainly from the Americans and UK and EU, because being on a senior exchange as opposed to a junior market, as with the OTCQX, should lend its way to a lot more interest and exposure.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on the call today and giving us your insight about Logic. Thanks a lot, Brent.
Thank you, guys.
Wow, what an interesting insight from Brent Sun from Logic. That was an interesting one, especially with everything that's going on with the e-commerce space. Guys, I've chucked a link in the description. I found a nice fact sheet on Logic, worth checking them out. Anything else you want to say, Elliot, on that note?
Yeah, I mean, what interested me, what he was saying about the valuation, his price to revenue compared to the likes of Shopify. Logic are only at 2 times, whereas Shopify, he said, was over 50 times, and the market average was 25 times. So if they are as good as he says they are, then obviously there's a lot of scope for growth there, and then that should be reflected in their share price in the future. Yeah,
definitely. And it would be very interesting to keep a close eye on how they do with the potential up exchange listing on NEO.
Yeah.
Fantastic insight there. Thanks so much, Brent. So that is a wrap. What an exciting Trade of the Week discussion that we've had today. Really, really looking forward to what we can get on the next show. Guys, don't forget to thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.